with Monday. Good morning, Jack Heath, J Dog on the boards. This is Good Morning New Hampshire on the Pulse of NH News Talk Network. We are across the board in terms of Lakes region, Seacoast, Lakes region as well with the 98.3 FM additional signal HE2, 1077 FM. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of NH. Talk about a list of things. I don't know where to begin this weekend. My head, I don't know about you. The head is spinning just from getting going. The back and forth with Israel and Iran, and this is getting it's still a very fluid, active situation. The Israelis really targeting strategic parts of the nuclear enrichment program and nuclear capabilities of Iran and taking out key leaders. Tehran firing back into Israel, and of course, fatalities, civilian fatalities. The back and forth. President Trump on his way to meet with world leaders this morning. The largest manhunt in Minnesota history is over. They got their suspect, the former state government official, if you will, former Governor Walt's appointee. But the point is, he was involved in state government, killing the former House Speaker, as well as another assassination attempt, political assassination. They got the suspect in a field, a rural area, because of a trail cam. Picked him up, and then they were able to get him. 43 hours, largest manhunt in Minnesota history over. It was also a weekend of events, protest demonstrations on the so-called No Kings Day around New Hampshire, Concord, for example, Portsmouth and beyond. And it was a big celebration Saturday night in our nation's capital, U.S. Army's 250th anniversary. Fireworks, a lot going on. I don't know where to begin. We're going to get a check-in from Neil Levesque on all the above. And J-Dog, Red Sox, I don't know, not surprised. They did a big trade going into the weekend. J.J. Spawn wins the U.S. Open in a very incredible finish on a very difficult golf course. J-Dog, that's just it's just touching the surface on all the above. Yeah, well, he's older, quite a story. He's a journeyman, but he hung in there more than once, talked about giving up the game. What a finish, what a difficult golf course, and what what an 18th hole, a 60-some foot, mile. It was 63, 64 feet, the putt, and big win for him. That's a game changer, a life changer for him, and I think he's had a good year, and he came close to the beginning of the season in a playoff, I think it was, but it was a great story yesterday, but very difficult golf course. Again, so much to talk about this morning. We're going to check in with some of our regular contributors. Neil Levesque, Institute of Politics, St. Anselm College. Neil, I tried to do a summation in a minute, but it's very difficult from this weekend. I mean, frankly, it's mind-boggling. The suspected Minnesota lawmaker assassin has been captured. That's the biggest manhunt in Minnesota history. Israeli Air Force continues to take out senior Iranian officials, including an intelligence chief. There were talks of a sort of a contract out on President Trump after some of the peace talks with Tehran, and now you're hearing stories from the United States that the White House nixed a plan by the Israeli forces to take out the supreme leader in Tehran. This is remarkable stuff. We'll talk about that. Of course, the president's on his way to a world leader summit, a weekend of events and protests on the one hand against the so-called No Kings Day on Saturday, but a big celebration in the nation's capital for the United States Army, 250th with fireworks. I don't know where to begin, Neil. I really don't. You couldn't have scripted all this last Wednesday. Really? Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, again, so much here because I could do a couple hour or at least an hour just talking about the Middle East situation, just how complex, but how significant this is. And actually, people aren't paying attention how closely the United States is working with Israel, which my opinion as we need to be and should be. I don't know if you saw the carrier fleet that was dispatched to the Middle East. I mean, you look at those Air Force carriers, you know what's underneath them, right? Nuclear submarines, U.S. One of those submarines could take care of any issues in Tehran. I don't know where this goes, but on the one hand, I think Tehran has been, how do I say this? A lot of the teeth have been taken out of the tiger, and maybe that opens the door for talks that are meaningful between the United States and Tehran to end nuclear enrichment ambitions. There are reports that they had enough uranium for several nuclear bombs, and a lot of people don't know the background or history here. And then you look at China, Russia. I mean, there's a ton of stuff there, and it's ironic the president's going to meet with world leaders this morning in Canada. I know, in Canada, the G7 and oil, yeah, and economic, yeah, huge. Well, Well, we have to be. I mean, they would have not if it wasn't for the United States, they would have already not been here as a state, as a nation. I mean, you look at the goal of Tehran, you look at the goal of Hamas, Hezbollah, some of the proxies in Syria, you look at the goal. But it's ironic, Neil, because this is just so profound. I spent a lot of time in school years ago studying the Middle East, and then years later at the War College as a civilian, the U.S. Army War College for the National Security Seminar. And you look at the history, you look at what's going on in the Middle East and the role Tehran plays. I have no doubt that we knew well ahead of time. I don't know if you saw some of the ancillary reports out of Virginia, but a day after Israel first struck the nuclear targets inside Iran, the local fast food type the food delivery people around Langley, Virginia, the CIA were just go they were around the clock bringing pizza and food to the Pentagon, and they what is going on? I mean, it was just interesting the extra hours as the analysts were working back. I thought they had a big cafeteria in the Pentagon, but I guess they could do the takeout stuff. But my point is where this goes now is very interesting. The reports that President Trump already spoke and briefed the Russian leader Vladimir Putin, because people who don't know the significance here is the Israelis have been wanting to do this for a while, but they maintain, and I don't think there's any evidence to counter this. You're not hearing Tehran disagree that they were just getting too close to an actual nuclear weapon capability, and that's something that Israel and I think the Middle East, or therefore the world, can't afford because the likelihood of them using it because they want to obliterate Israel. So Israel struck. You have a divided public here at home because you already have this anti-Semitism, anti-Jewish sentiment that's been brewing with younger or some people talking about free Palestine, free Palestine. You got Hamas still governing as the political entity in Gaza. So you put all this together, and I think I don't know, but China is also a big player here because they indirectly fuel a lot of this. This is rather big stuff globally, but I hope that this thing can simmer down because the last thing you want is a bigger conflict in the Middle East that could go bigger than that. And you're right on the economy. You're right on energy prices. We're going to hear from Doug Tegnan, our economic thinker, but All this has political consequences, but I just don't know where it's going to go. And you still have the situation in Ukraine. Right. Yeah. Well, I will tell you, Israel will do what it has to do to survive, and that's something that Israel has shown. Their intelligence is very, very good, the best in the world, by the way. Assad and their intelligence, but I don't think it would have been conceivable, and it will never be written or proven that they could have done this strike on Tehran without sort of a quiet okay from the United States. I don't know if they could have made that bold of a strike because we have their back. And in this day and age, I think Israel needs us and wants us, even if they can take care of themselves. People don't understand the order of nuclear arsenals in the world. By the way, I don't mean to be a bummer on a sunny Monday morning, but you got Russia in number one. People don't know that, followed by the U.S. But in the top tier in terms of the world, Israel does have its own nuclear arsenal, and they will use it if they have to survive. And Tehran is the biggest threat, obviously. It's ironic, too, that President Trump had this big Middle Eastern swing where he went to countries like Saudi Arabia to meet in the kingdom. He went to Qatar. He went to, Dubai. But Saudi Arabia is a key player. And I don't think they're going to go anywhere near supporting Tehran, even though Tehran's putting out the call for a rise against Israel. I think that trip recently by the president in the Middle East was very fortuitous, ironically. But where this goes now, I don't know. But I would think that if the United States and Israel stay close together, and China stays out of this, I think the United States and Israel can continue to basically break any real threat from Tehran to Israel, other than ballistic type drone missiles, because I just don't think they're going to have the nuclear capability to go bigger. And I think they know that. And the other thing indirectly is I don't think we're going to see a revolution or a revolt in Iran against the mullahs in Tehran, but that's something that Netanyahu's openly talked about, and actually tried to broadcast to the Iranian people, to the proud people of Iran. This is your chance to stand up and overcome your regime. But we'll see where it all goes. This is profound. I think by midweek, probably Wednesday, we should have a better handle on this. Oh, I know. No. Yeah, and they've been showing that in Gaza. In fact, I think they just hit. They're going to keep pounding Hamas and keep an eye on Hezbollah. Neil, before I let you go, presidents in Canada. That's interesting and ironic. We still have some trade stuff going on. I had Caroline Levitt, your former student from St. Anselm College Institute of Politics, on my show the other morning. I think we'll hear soon on a trade deal with China. But locally, we still see some quietness, some quiet around these big races here in terms of any other big entries. It was interesting, Caroline Levitt, when I asked her to name a couple of major Republicans who are going to run for the U.S. Senate, presumably to take on Chris Pappas, the lone Democrat or big name in the field. She didn't name anyone specifically, but saying that there would be. So I'm wondering, when are we going to see who's emerging to run for the U.S. Senate, first congressional district as a Republican, maybe Democrat for the governor's race? Mm, right. All right, Neil Levesque, good long segment. I appreciate it on Monday. Thank you, Neil Levesque, St. Anselm College. Beautiful Monday weather-wise as we kick off the week. Hopefully, a nicer looking week than what we've been seeing. Yesterday was pretty nice for Father's Day. Hope you had a good one. J-Dog, our poll question up on X at the Pulse of an H. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. Our poll question up on X. Simply, do you think the anti-ICE protests we've been seeing in major U.S. cities will simmer down? President calling for more roundups this morning or overnight on social media. What do you think? Do you think the major cities we've seen the anti-ICE protests? Do you think they'll quiet down or not? I'm probably thinking no, but we'll see. J Dog, we asked an interesting question on Friday going into the weekend. I believe it had to do with support on Israel striking the nuclear capabilities or enrichment efforts or advancement in Iran. Do we have a result on that one? Really? Divided to public, divided. All right. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, by the Pulse of an Inch. Back in a moment. Welcome back. And reminder, we're on YouTube. That's right. We have our own channel, video channel, YouTube, The Pulse of NH. Everything's The Pulse of NH here, The Pulse of New Hampshire, our Pulse podcast network. Check it out for new editions this week locally and with our podcast from the region as well. It wasn't just big news nationally and internationally over the weekend, but right here at home, what a bunch of headlines. I don't know if you heard, but I think it was just after 3 in the morning on over the weekend on Sunday. Yesterday morning, a Bedford police officer was on patrol, according to reports. And Mike Pomp talked about this earlier at our morning information center. He saw a vehicle running in the parking lot behind the Hampton Inn and Suites, Hawthorne Drive in Bedford, with two people inside. Two people were unconscious, according to reports. WMUR has this as well. And 43-year-old guy eventually. Backup was called, but attempted to flee the vehicle and hitting two officers, injuring two Bedford police officers and cruisers. And they had to call, for all kinds of backup and medical help. So I hope those Bedford officers are okay. Talk about other bizarre headlines, because it wasn't just the national stuff like in Minnesota. We'll come back to that. What a bizarre, crazy, terrifying story with this nut job. They finally got him, by the way. It was the largest manhunt in Minnesota state history. This guy who targeted some political Democrats. He's a Democrat as well, former Governor Waltz and previous state government appointee. But here at home, look at some of these other headlines. You can't make this stuff up. I'm not going to comment, but I'll just tell you the headlines. This is right off of WMUR's website. 4 people seriously burned after pouring gasoline onto a fire pit in Berlin, New Hampshire. Probably not a good idea, but I'll leave it at that. That's right. 4 people were seriously burned after pouring gasoline onto a fire pit in Berlin, New Hampshire. Another one, this is a headline. Here we are in June. Here we are in June in Mason, New Hampshire. Good old Mason. I remember doing stories there for my television news days. Man is dead, according to reports, after crashing a snowmobile. That's right. A snowmobile in Mason into a tree. Crashing a snowmobile into a tree in Mason. That's right. This is June. Some of the other stories on the subject of our poll question: President Trump turning up the heat, not telling ICE to back off at all on these illegal migrant raids or pickups in mainly major U.S. cities. A lot of these are Democrat-run cities like Los Angeles. So we'll see if that simmers down. That's our poll question today. President Trump, as we get talking, and it's rather amazing, the contrast of stuff happening this morning. But the President Trump is attending the G7 summit in Canada, of all places. While we have the trade stuff going on, G7 leaders are meeting in Canada, and the main subject, no doubt, with the leaders meeting in Canada today, will be Israel and Iran and the conflict and how to help bring an end to that. But that's going to be a rather delicate process. It's still a very fluid situation. But the G7 is happening. We'll have live reports this morning from some of our NBC News Talk contributors. And if you're not familiar, it's a group of 7. It's called G7. It's a group of 7 of the world's most advanced economies in the European Union, the EU. And all this was the backdrop of the ongoing trade tariff stuff. And President Trump is in Canada. And this should be some of the interesting optics, but that's where the G7 is meeting. And of course, Israel, Iran, the trade tariff stuff, you name it, Ukraine, all that happening. Again, I couldn't have written all this at the end of the week saying, okay, coming into Monday, just write 8 different things that are huge that are going to be happening all at once. All right. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. We'll come back. Michael Graham on deck. And then Doug Tengden, our economic thinker, talking about the situation between what's happening in Israel and Tehran in terms of impacting things like world fuel prices, the economy, our markets. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. Back in a moment. You know, the subject of what's happening in Minnesota, what happened in Minnesota, that manhunt's over political violence, and we are seeing so much coming out of just what seems like a long time ago out of Los Angeles. Look at the riots there after the ICE raids and pickups or operations, if you will, in LA. Then what happened in Minnesota, but a lot of the I guess they call them events here in New Hampshire, Concord, Portsmouth, Saturday, the so-called No Kings Day, and we remember former FBI Director James Comey, who I think is kind of a political doofus, but a very narcissistic person, in my opinion. But his the so-called shell formation of a picture he took on the beach of 8647, and I think as I talked to I was out in a restaurant now that a day or two after that happened, and one of the servers, hospitality workers where I was, said they were talking about this. Everyone knows what the term 86 means, especially a law enforcement official, former FBI director, in terms of assassinate. But the violence is, it get the line, that margin, where's the boundary, gets closer to home. And I just want to do that setup before we bring in Michael Graham, New Hampshire Journal, nhjournal.com, because he has a story about this leading off his morning report. Good morning, Michael. Hmm. Hmm. Well, it had right on the left side, it had 86 and 47 on the other side, clearly on the sign as well. Yeah. 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 Well, did Stephanie Shaheen, the other Democrat in that race, make a comment or no? Well, didn't didn't you have a story or on with us the other day talking about a state representative from Portsmouth who referred to Kelly Ayotte with the term KKK Ayotte? That's like so over the top bad. Well, you've had 2 assassination attempts on the current president. Yeah. No. Well, they're no, and you no. You, yeah. Well, this is, it's okay for some. But the interesting thing, Michael, is we're just past what 7 months into this, just over 6 months into this for this term, the first 6 months, and a lot of these people holding these signs really have cannot and have not gotten over the results of November 5th. So I pointed out on my show the other day that we saw the couple week period where the hatred shifted to Elon Musk before he moved on. So it was Musk has got to go. Musk is terrible. Elon Musk, he's not a king. He's not elected. Hands off Elon Musk. Teslas, blow up Teslas, hurt Elon Musk. Now it started in LA over the so-called, the anti-ICE federal enforcement actions. And then it morphed to No King's Day on Saturday. In a couple weeks from now, a month from now, will probably be another reason for events. But is this gonna be it? We're gonna see this for the next 3.5 years. Mhm. Yeah, and is, former mayor, transportation secretary, presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg, is he part of the face or future of the Democrat Party in, Nashua today? Mm, yep. Alright, Michael Graham, thank you. Just on a positive, sunny note, bright note on this Monday morning, I was on Route 4 coming across the coast to our Capitol studios here in the Vinny Media headquarters in the Capitol in Concord. And I going through Northwood, New Hampshire, kind of that antique area with the schools, Northwood, with July 4th coming up. It's just great to see on just about every utility pole, both sides of the street coming out of Flagdown Saturday on every utility pole through the town of Northwood, the main stretch there, both sides, the American flag. And I love that when you see that in some of the towns. I think Wolfboro, last time I checked, I haven't been there this week, but sometimes they'll do that. I think it's pretty cool. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. Doug Tengden on the economic side of the situation between Israel and Iran. What's the impact on things like oil and gas, the markets, the economy, uncertainty, and a whole lot more? Back in a moment. Two stories. One story I haven't had any time at all. People have asked me, "Oh, you're paying attention at all to this Karen Reed murder trial stuff?" I said, "No, I haven't. With everything else going on, are you kidding me?" J Dog, by the way, was this anniversary of your great historic graduation from Concord High School today? Wow. Yeah. Wow. And you gave the commencement address, didn't you? I think more C minus students should give the commencement address. It might be more interesting. All right, Doug Tengden, worldmarketadvisors.com. with really a timely look at the economy here at home with so much happening in the Middle East, Israel, Iran. You look at markets, you look at oil, gas, you look at everything. And what a remarkable, well, surreal situation up in Canada. The G7 leaders meeting, including the European Union, by the way, is part of that with President Trump in Canada with the ongoing trade tariff stuff. You couldn't script this stuff. Good morning, Doug. No, it's yeah, that's why I joked, like, I haven't had much time for the Karen Reed trial, the stories about the actor Brad Pitt and his alimony or if he's losing his hair. I haven't had much time for this stuff, or stories about Prince Harry. I haven't had much time for this stuff, Doug. Well, Doug, what are the markets saying? We have an ongoing situation. We're not through. I don't know. I hopefully we're through the worst of the stuff with Israel and Iran. I'm not sure because they're still back and forth. Israel's quite serious, of course, to eliminate this threat now, feeling it they had to do it given nuclear enrichment buildup. The United States, of course, sending more, sending well, a real naval presence into the Middle East with Air Force carriers with all kinds of capabilities to support this effort if things get out of hand, as well as nuclear submarines, I'm sure, underneath those carriers. And the President Trump and G7 in Canada, but well, no doubt the G7 subject before tariffs has to be the Israel Iran stuff. But how's the economy here at home on this Monday? Now that we've had a few days to react to the latest in the Middle East, is it impacting things in a good or bad way here, or too early to tell? Yeah, I don't know. How could you think about that? The markets a whisper off an all-time high, and look what's happening. It's rather remarkable. I don't think people. Mm, yeah, yeah, right, right. Yeah, it's interesting because one of the Israeli moves was to bomb the oil fields for Tehran. Interesting stuff, Doug. And we had Caroline Levitt on my show. I think it was Thursday morning, White House press secretary before Israel, the back and forth with Iran started, but talking about the trade team of the United States coming back from the talks in London with China, and that we can expect some framework or probably announcement on a trade deal with China unless it changes or goes cold, maybe this week. I mean, who knows? Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, yeah. And that's why I think what Israel's already done from a real strategic point of view, sites to knock back that nuclear enrichment and with the scientists and the leadership and all that. All right. Thanks, Doug. Thank you, Doug. This is a real positive upper, but Michaela Schifrin is from New Hampshire. She is not even arguably, she's the best skier in the world ever in terms of titles, World Cups, wins. Michaela Schifrin, more than Bodie Miller. I mean, she's unbelievable, J Dog. I think you'd agree with me. She's in a class of her own, right? So this is really neat. She received an honorary doctorate degree from Dartmouth and over the weekend. And this is what she wrote about her late father. I'm just gonna she posted this. So we have an ad with the financial service firm that she's promoting on our Pulse network. Hi, hey dad, I received this is just wonderful. I received an honor. This is Father's Day, I mean weekend. I received an honorary degree from Dartmouth today. Who would have ever thought we'd have two Dr. Schifrins in the fam? One went through 12 plus years of school. One skis down a mountain. Felt a bit closer to you in the past 24 hours for the first time in a really long time. And I'm so grateful for that. Happy Father's Day. I miss you always, Michaela. I just think she posted that on her fan page. She is unbelievable. Unbelievable. About 800 comments on that. I edited that. I think it's neat. Good going, Michaela. What a champ in many, many, many ways. Hey, Google. Hey, let's play the Pulse of an H. We'll check in on sand sculpture contest, Hampton Beach, Alicia Preston's Anthopoulos, Seacoast Online, up next.